Welcome to NOCLIP, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Rutherman.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about To the Moon, a game that was developed and published by Freebird Games and was released in 2011 on Windows, Linux, OS X, Android, iOS, Switch, PS5, and the Xbox Series X and S.
But first, you can give us a like or a rating, subscribe, share, all that stuff. That would be greatly appreciated.
So this game sucks to do a podcast about. Gotcha. It was a big joke the whole time. Whoa.
You look so stupid right now.
You look so dumb. So in addition to our normal, this is a narrative game, therefore take the spoiler warning a little bit more seriously spiel that we do whenever we play narrative games, I want to say that the reason this game is an interesting one to do a podcast about, interesting in a bad way in this case, is because this game is so much more narrative than it is anything else, that a lot of what we're going to be doing is just sort of like discussion of things that are spoilers. Just fully are things that happen in the game that directly influence the plot, etc., etc. So be forewarned and therefore forearmed for being spoiled on this game in the ensuing 1 hour. So we can move past that, but I did want to get that out of the way right at the beginning.
Right. So have you seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind?
I have. It's been a very long time, but I have seen it.
Okay, yeah. Like, not a knock against the game or anything, but it is kind of wild how similar the concept is in this game to that movie.
That's true.
Yeah, and I imagine it would be a lot more novel and impactful if you hadn't seen that movie.
Yeah, and hypothetically, if they went even further back, they would get a scene of him as a baby, though it wouldn't be like Jim Carrey under a table or whatever happens in that scene. That
right.
Sticks out in my mind for some reason. That's true. So that's also, if you've seen Eternal Sunshine, it is also a spoiler for this game.
Well, they go in different directions. That's about erasing memories, and this is about changing them.
Yeah, altering.
So it's kind of different. Yeah.
But yeah, so that is sort of like the base concept, right? So this is a game that looks like it was made in RPG Maker, but I did not do the research to tell if that's true. But it is a pixel art 2D game in which you walk around and talk to people, and occasionally you have to collect things, and that's all. But the sort of overarching concept behind it is that this is like a near future science fiction game where you play two characters who work for some specified but unimportant larger company that goes to people who hire them and alters their past memories so that they will be influenced to do something currently, or at least to have thought that they had done it, is kind of the way that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. It's kind of unclear whether or not they actually alter the past for their patients normally. But like, because this guy's on his deathbed, they just have to do it purely in his memories.
Right. That's why I'm not sure if it's like the intent of it is to like fool you into thinking that you lived a different life, or if it is like a self-improvement thing. Because it seems like it could be both.
Yeah. I think it is a just replace your memories to make you think you lived a different life. Because one of the things that comes up, like some of the like additional texts that are referenced, is the Emperor's New Clothes.
Yeah.
Which the whole thing about that is like the like like the fact that like the emperor is living the fantasy of thinking he's got nice clothes on when he's naked, and then the kid points out that he is naked. So like there's like the whole idea of like, are you the kid who points out that like, oh, the memories were fake, he still like kind of lived a sad life where he grew apart from his wife and then she died? Or are you the person who's like, oh, like who are you, the emperor who keeps living the fantasy?
Right.
Yeah, so like I feel like it wants you to question that, like the fact that it isn't real, like is it still meaningful, I guess?
Yeah, and then the other instance of a thing that's referenced is Animorphs, which obviously plays a lot into it because... Anyway,
the Animorphs thing is funny because when I saw it, it was like early on, like you go down in the basement, you can examine something, and it's like, oh, like a shoebox full of old Animorph books. I like rolled my eyes so hard at it they almost fell out of my skull. Because like we've seen this sort of thing before, where like an indie developer will like shoehorn in like references for no reasons to things they like, and it feels forced and unnatural. So I thought that's what was happening, and then was pleasantly surprised when it like came up in the backstory and actually made any sense.
Yeah, it's like the origami rabbits, right? Is going to be like a major thing, like it's a symbolic thing, and you look at that and you're like, okay, how could this be interpreted within like the narrative? But the box of Animorphs really does not signal the same sort of like brain waves to go off,
right?
Yeah, so in the events of the story, you're hired by an old dying man named Johnny, who his wife passed away a few years ago, and he hired a caretaker who the game really wants you to think is an important character, but doesn't do a whole lot in it. And then you arrive and go into his memories, and his request is that he wants to go to the moon, hence the title of the game. So that's like our broad concept in the setup, and I was pretty sold on it. I didn't actually know anything about this game coming into it, like as far as like what it was about or like what kind of game it was. So I was like a little bit surprised when it wasn't much of it didn't make a lot of use of the interactivity that you have. And that's kind of, I don't know if this is necessarily what I want to start with. It's something that sticks out to me because this game came out in 2011, that I think that in more recent years, I expect a lot more out of narrative games than I would have in 2011. Because I think what this game excels at, and the reason that the game doesn't actually suck, is the writing is actually really good. But it just, it feels like the medium isn't being utilized in a way that really like brings it to another level for me. Agree, disagree?
I think I disagree, but like not super strongly. Yeah, because this is an interesting debate to have, and I think just people are going to just draw the lines in different places from each other. But like I do think this is, and I might actually just think this about most narratives. Like that's something that like I've thought a lot about and have not come to any conclusions on. But like I do think this is like this narrative is enhanced by being interactive. Like I think the same story as a book wouldn't hit me quite the same way. And I think the perspective that you have as like you play as the scientists, I think they do some interesting things with that. That's enhanced by being interactive. You kind of uncover the mystery with them. So yeah, like it to me, I don't think it really felt like it fell short of most other like narrative games. Like I think it's something like Loretta, which is like a point and click narrative game that also had like some weird little mini games in it in between story segments, like very much a similar type of thing. So I don't know. I felt this felt just as like meaningful as a game to me as that.
Well, it's not that I don't think that it is a game, right? Because there's pathfinding, there are the sort of mini games, but I largely think that like there's an element of exploration. That's what I would grant it, because like in Loretta, you make decisions which impact the plot. And it's not a straight narrative just told to you. The fact that you have to go pick things up, I do want to call out that I really like the pixel art in this game. I think that the visual element aided in the storytelling to an extent. It was something that I think did, put an additional layer on top of things. But it didn't feel like the fact that I was like, if I had just watched a Let's Play versus playing the game myself, I don't know if my experience would have been different. And that's kind of my sticking point. And why I wanted to bring it up first, because it's like the thing that I feel like I'm the most like prepared to talk about is sort of like it's hard to have a conversation that isn't lit crit on this because there are so few interactive elements to it. And in a way, that is a choice that they made. Like they said, we're making this a game. There is going to be an element of exploration. And then just the absolute baseline of interactivity in every other respect that I'm not really sure did it for me. Like, I did not like playing the game, but it didn't feel a lot like I was, like, in a way, having it as a book or as probably like a graphic novel or something would have made me more engaged, because I felt less engaged because a lot of the game was walking and you interact with an object and you get a little circle and then you go hit a button a few times. And as far as I know, nothing changes the way that the story plays out, or the order in which you see things or hear things. It's all just kind of on rails.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can't disagree with any of that. But, like, I feel like it's just a difference in, like, how your brain's wired, I guess. Because I feel like this, I would not, like, the game, I feel like the story wouldn't hit nearly as hard for me, I think, if I just read it or just watched it. So yeah, I don't know. I think like interactivity really, like, even if it's something as mundane as just walking around, I think really like boosts my engagement personally. Yeah, I definitely had this sort of debate with like JJ before, about like certain games. Like I pretty much, like, once again, probably how I'm wired. But like I feel like most narratives I would like theoretically would like more if they were interactive. So maybe I'm not the right person to have this debate with.
I mean, like I said, I don't think it's necessarily a debate. It's more like the game. I don't know what the game markets itself as, but it is very much like in the realm of a visual novel. Except when I think of a visual novel, I think of something that has dialogue options and decisions to make, which this game does not have. And if I think of an adventure game, I think of a thing that has puzzles, which this game does not have. So I have a difficult time sort of like categorizing this. Not that I'm saying it isn't a game, but just that like it is a bare minimum of interactivity. So like if that's enough to make it better for you, then I think that's good. But to me, I felt like it was more of a way to make it take a long time to experience the same story that I could have seen in a movie.
Right. Yeah. I like the feeling of like uncovering a mystery, I guess. Like even like you're right. Like you're not really actively solving anything, but like I don't know. There's something about like being in control of like how fast you gain. I don't know. I guess that's true of reading too. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because like you're not wrong. Like the gameplay elements, like it almost kind of feels like, and I think we talked about this on the Loretta episode as well. Like the little like flip over the tiles puzzles at the end, like you do almost kind of get to the point where you're like, maybe the game, we should have just cut these parts out,
right?
And it should have just been like a visual novel. But like, my head thinks that, but my heart does not agree. I think, yeah. Like, I also think like the fact that it's like made in RPG Maker. Like, I have a real soft spot for top-down games. Mm-hmm. Like, I just like to explore like a top-down game world, and I really like how like the forested area around the house is so like dense with detail, even though it's annoying sometimes. Like the stuff that you like can't walk over feels a little inconsistent, but like for the most part, I just like being in the game, I guess.
Yeah, I do think that that it is a good call out. Like, I think that the art is done well enough that, and I say done well enough, it exceeds the minimum that you would need for this. I feel I do really like the visuals that they created for this game. Like, I think it sells every location really well. Like, nothing doesn't look like the thing it's supposed to look like, and it did enrich the environments a lot, which I was a big fan of. So definitely, yes, agree. I also enjoyed being in the world, and I think that the art is something that would justify it being a video game to some extent. So yeah, agreed.
For sure.
I will say on those puzzles at the end, I didn't notice the like ideal thing next to it. So there's like a minimum number of moves to solve it until the second day, because it calls it out on the second day. It's like, this is the ideal thing. And I was just kind of clicking on the first one at random or whatever, and I ended up solving it in 4 as opposed to 2, which is the minimum. And then I hit the minimum on every other day as soon as that was pulled out, including one day when I went over and then I restarted the game to, like, I shut the game down and reopened it to a save to do that one again so that I could hit the ideal. So starved for interaction was I that I needed to like optimize the one like puzzle element that I was being scored on. So I hit the minimum on every day except for the first day. I was +2 on this on that element of the game. And as far as I know, it did nothing for me. So
right. Before we get too far away from it, I actually had a little bit of criticism for the art.
Sure.
To just throw out there. I also talked about this on the Cthulhu Saves Santa or Christmas or whatever episode, which you shouldn't listen to because I recorded on my computer microphone, even though I think it's a pretty good episode. But yeah, the art kind of feels like asset store art to me. Like I think it's A+ use of this type of art, and I don't think it was actually asset store art, but it does look like art made by a programmer who looked up art on an asset store and used that as reference. So that's like, I think there's like a charm in almost like an intimacy that comes from like small games like this made with things like RPG Maker or Adventure Game Studio and things like that. But that is one thing about them that I don't like, is that the art will tend to have kind of a more less art directed quality, kind of homogenous, that I'm that I'm, I guess, a little bit more sensitive to than other people might be. Yeah, because I like the art in Cthulhu Saves Christmas as well. But I think it was much more asset store-y in that game. Yeah, I do think that there's like a tendency among people to
be less critical of things that they're just like not as familiar with. And that definitely like goes for me when it comes to art. It's just like they arranged these things in a way that was pleasing to me. I loved it.
Right.
I thought it was great. I do, but I mean, it also, I think there are some choices made that I find interesting. Like the fact that it is a game preps your brain for certain associations and stuff. I like the fact that the scientists in the game, like your two main characters, have these like cloaks on, or cloaks, fuck me, like coats, like lab coats, right? Wherever they go. Okay. But because it's a game and there's sort of this like RPG thing to it, it almost like makes them seem like wizards, like they're wearing robes. And I think that that's intentional to some degree. They have like long sleeves when they move their arms and stuff in that way. I think that that's like a thing that there's like sort of a magical element to what they're doing. And you're going back in time. So I think that that's like a thing, or maybe I'm reading into that, but art's what you make of it. Am I right? So yeah, I guess that's that on that. I suppose.
So I started off the episode asking if you'd seen Eternal Sunshine. And I will continue the podcast by asking how well you remember Blade Runner and if you've seen the director's cut.
I'm trying to think at what point. So I think I've seen not the director's cut most recently. So I remember most from that. And then I would have seen the director's cut, well, I don't know, 20 years ago. Before I was born, because I'm canonically 19.
Right, of course. We all know this. Is it Ridley Scott? Who directed Blade Runner?
It was Ridley Scott.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. So, anyway, there's a scene where Deckard, Harrison Ford's character, is like visited by his boss, I think, who they have a whole conversation, and then at the end, the guy leaves a little origami unicorn. And in the director's cut, it feels like years later, Ridley Scott had the idea, it would have been cool if Deckard was a replicant, right? It seems like something that wormed its way into his brain and he couldn't stop thinking about it. Because in the director's cut, he pretty much confirms it, because like later on, Deckard has like a hallucination or something where he like sees a unicorn. And anyway, and you know, if you watch the whole movie with all the context, it basically like just says like grabs you by the shoulder and is like Deckard is a replicant, which makes no sense with the rest of the movie, in my opinion. So it just feels like slapped in there. But while playing this game, like I had a couple of moments because like they introduced the origami rabbits early on, and at first I had like no thoughts or opinions about what they might mean, but then called out like, oh, like there's like the whole like folklore thing about like the rabbit on the moon. Like there's supposedly like a rabbit shape on the moon, and like I had that thought of like, oh yeah, like the moon rabbit thing, like that's going to be tied in before that was eventually revealed that was true. And then later on, I was like, oh yeah, like the origami rabbit, like especially the one that's different colors. Like, I wonder if that's inspired by Blade Runner. Was a thought that I had later on. So I think that's like an interesting parallel, because the game does end with the two scientists walking away, and then there's like a little glitch, which kind of implies like, ooh, maybe what's real and what's not. Maybe everything's a simulation sort of thing.
Right.
Which I also think is I had this idea after the fact and just threw it in there at the end kind of vibe, much like Blade Runner. So
that's true. I also have...
I just vomited all over you with my theories. So,
well, no, I mean, I think that works. We made sure from the top that everyone who's listening to this has definitely played the game and won't be spoiled by it. So,
right, we made sure that everyone played the game and watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind
and Blade Runner.
before they
twice,
came.
both Blade Runner and Blade
Yeah,
Runner's
you have to watch
cut.
the original and the director's cut.
That makes sense. Yeah. So now that you've done all that and have come back 14 hours later of pure media consumption, I do want to say one of the things that I wanted to call out, one of the few complaints that I have about the narrative. I feel like we started on this like very rocky start, I should say. The writing in this game actually is very good. The story is compelling, and I think it does a really good job with its tone, and we'll get into those things individually later. One of the few complaints that I do have with the narrative is that scene at the ending, like at the very end. Because I feel like it kind of marveled all over the place, where it was like, we're going to set up the sequel in a way that like, we have no way of knowing if the sequel will ever even exist for a game like this. It does. There are like 3 games in the series now, which I didn't know until it showed me an advertisement for it after the credits. And then, yeah, that glitch where it's like, it's trying to call into question, like, I understand if you have this, like, what's the word? You have designs for this larger sci-fi universe that you want these games to take place in, but it feels like such a mood killer for what I think is a really satisfying ending to the story that's told in this game. Because I did also have like a brief like Blade Runner moment at the end where I'm just like, oh, are they trying to, is this an altered memory of one of the scientists that we're in right now? Or perhaps is this the caretaker's altered memory? Probably not, but like the game really seemed to want me to care about those kids and that lady.
Right.
And it made me sort of stop being in the moment of the end of the game and then start this like weird, like, I don't know, like speculation about a larger world. And I thought that was weird.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It is a bit of a mood killer. And I don't, then the problem I have with it, most of all, is I don't believe for one half of a split fucking second that they actually had like grand designs for a larger sci-fi universe. Like much like I think like with Blade Runner, like I feel like it's a thing they thought of after the fact and said, wouldn't that be cool? And just threw it in there. With no idea like what they would do with it or where it would go. And like that's what I don't like.
I don't did you play this on what platform did you play this on?
I played on PC.
On PC. So did you play
on Steam.
The most recent update of the game? That is like the 16:9 update.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So this game did get a remaster, not really, but like a slight update that they released fairly recently, like last month or something.
Yeah, I noticed when I Googled it, like more recent stuff or like was popping up. I was like, oh, I thought this game came out in like 2010 or something. Like, did it come out more recently than that? But anyway.
Yeah. So
that's why.
I'm saying it is possible that they put the scenes in there after the fact. Right. And I don't know because I also played the most recent version. But that could lend some credence to your theory that they didn't have grand designs for a larger sci-fi world and that they were just like, well, this did well, so we can expand it, but we should put in an after credit scene to like bridge the gap. And I guess because games these days are patchable, that could have happened at any point in the last 14 years. So,
right.
Because that would explain it. It feels so out of place with the rest of it that kind of like struck me as odd.
For sure.
But yeah, to talk about the actual story of the game, which is sort of the meat and potatoes of it. I'm not going to do like a full plot synopsis, because I feel like that would just be, you would have the full experience of playing the game if I did that. Touche. But I think one of the things that I want to talk about specifically that I think the game does really, really well, is I am a fan of things that are not happy. This is a known fact. I like sad things. I like things that are upsetting in different ways.
Yeah, things that make you feel like maybe life isn't worth living.
Whatever Dan said in Life is Strange 2 episode. Yeah.
That maybe be preferable to plunge into the void or whatever. Something like that.
Which is true of me. But in my experience, I have found that a lot of games, a lot of narratives at all, that are sad or have like a theme around loss or death in that way, tend to be, I want to say like exploitative is the word that came to mind, even though I don't necessarily know if that's the truth. But they tend to lay it on very thick. The emotional part. They'll play a sad piano track. People will slowly shed a single tear and then break down and sob later. It shows that it affects a lot of people. It's like a big thing. I felt like this game did such an amazing job of keeping the sad parts of the game in their full experiential spectrum, where it's sad, but there's also like these elements of happiness to them, and also there's a bittersweet element when at the end of the game, when like everything, when you've completed your mission or whatever, and they bring River back into the picture after your character assumes that not your character. That's another thing we could talk about.
It's in my notes.
Yeah, it's Neil and Mia, I believe, are their names.
Ava, I think.
Ava. So Neil thinks that Ava has just deleted River from his memory after a certain point. And for her to come back so that they can go to the moon together is this very like heartfelt moment that's supposed to be kind of a tearjerker. And I thought that they did it really well because it balanced out that like shocking moment of her coming back. Not really that shocking if you thought about it. And him like finally dying, like he dies immediately after this happens, with this like positive and negative parts, and it never went too far in one direction. It never felt sappy or saccharine, and it also never felt like it was trying to exploit me with sad music to make me cry, right? Like it wasn't Marley in me.
The soundtrack is full of melancholic piano tracks, though.
That is true. And pretty good melancholic piano tracks. Yeah.
For sure. No, I agree 100%. I feel like it is balanced impressively. And I think it's right there if you know what the cover art looks like. It's the two scientists like watching the rocket launch. And I feel like that kind of like sums up the game's attitude nicely. Like it is optimistic. The sad parts are bittersweet, more than they are sad. It's a very better to have loved than lost. Loved and lost than to not loved at all kind of attitude. And it's surprising how well that comes through in all aspects of it. Like the pacing's good, like good use of comedic relief. And like I think there's another way I think the game is enhanced with the interactivity, because I thought that Ava like kind of like be almost like becoming the villain for like 10 minutes was kind of surprising and effective to me. And yeah, don't think a twist like that hits as hard when you're haven't been playing as that character for the last like 2 hours or whatever. So yeah, I thought that was really effective, and like like the pacing's really good. Like at the beginning, I think like you go in, the whole premise is set up, you're introduced to the dying man and his sad scenario, and then you have to go downstairs and you have to kind of like babysit the kids for a while. So like there's like a good bit of like levity, and yeah, like it just like it really keeps the ping pong match going back and forth really, really well.
Yeah, I made a note of it that, or like midway through the game, or like maybe 2/3 of the way through the game, whenever you hit Act 2, so like maybe like 3/4 of the way through the game.
Yeah. Act 1 is most of the game.
Yeah,
like when Act 2 came up, I was like, oh fuck,
am I going to be in this for a long time?
It's like I forgot that the game showed a title card for Act 1.
Because it had been so long since you saw it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember making a note at that point. I was just like, the game has really set up Ava as our like actual protagonist, right? Like Neil is there. He's often like sort of antagonistic towards your goals. He doesn't want to listen to reason. And despite the fact that you do play as him, you don't play as him as much as Ava. And so there's like, to me, I was like, the game really cares about this character and what they think, and they're using Neil as comic relief. That's like the duo. That's the dynamic that they're going for. But which they are, but for one.
Yeah, but classic straight man and
goofy guy, the other guy.
Straight man and other guy.
Straight man and other guy dynamic, a classic. And they do that, and they do it well. But it is also there to set up that betrayal at the end, because you think that you're in her head, but in reality, she has her own thought processes that actually take her to a different conclusion than what seems like the obvious one. And another argument against this game containing any more interactivity than it does culminate in the worst fucking shit I've ever seen in a game in my life, where you have to walk down a hallway and dodge spikes and zombies. It's so bad.
Yeah, I won't argue with you on this one.
Yeah. But yeah, no, good call out there. I think that's the characterization of the two characters and the amount of time that you spend with each one does a really good job of sort of enhancing the narrative, and like it leads to a misdirect because your expectation, because you've been playing as Ava so much, that she is the one that like is then broken off and doing her own thing. It makes it that much more shocking and unexpected. I almost kind of wish that it did end in tragedy. Like her solution didn't work, because I feel like that would be interesting to see. But like the game's ending obviously would not have been as good.
I feel like maybe I'm just a romantic, but like I feel like you have to let them get to the moon.
Oh yeah,
especially since their regular life was so sad. It would. I do agree that it would be interesting to have the plan fail, but then I feel like you have to have a to the moon too. To the moon.
Yeah, numeral 2 the moon.
Yeah, where they fix it.
Right. Yeah. It's like the company has also invented a short-term resurrection serum that will bring him back to life for 10 minutes.
Whenever Neil was on the phone, suspiciously, that one time, he was talking about how they were developing a time machine to go back in time and fix mistakes. Yeah, that phone scene in combination with the glitch at the end makes me think that you are right, like that we're watching like Ava's memory of what happened. Yeah, which is I don't like that.
It also explains to a degree like why Neil is so flippant and like quick to get through
it's like
things.
an exaggerated like version of him.
Yeah,
because it's like how she or no, he's like the real person in this scenario,
right? So I'm thinking he's just like this is like a routine. I've already been through this. Let me try and get through it as quickly as possible so I can make it to the next thing. But I guess that's how he would feel if it was just Johnny's memory anyway. So like,
right,
you know,
yeah. And then it also makes more sense, that you're playing as him less, right? Because like he's the one who's got his own ulterior motives, so you're not in his shoes.
So yeah, that's the two scientist characters. The two, what I would consider like the focal points of our story, are Johnny and River, his dead wife, and also Johnny's dead now too. So like the two dead people, Johnny and River. So one element of this, because it is like a classic love story that they're telling here. It's like they met as very young children and grew up together essentially, and eventually they started dating in high school, get married, try and buy a house on a cliff, or build a house on a cliff. That's like the arc that they go through. The thing I'm going to bring up right now, and the thing that I think makes this I don't know what the word is. I think one of the elements of this that isn't in a lot of classic love stories is that River is autistic. And it's weird to me that they don't say it outright, because they essentially do in reverse, because Isabel calls John a neurotypical, which infers the only other thing would be neuroatypical. So it's weird to me that they never like outright say the word autism at all in the game, but it is like the crux of River's character. It's like she has a difficult time relating to people, and she has this thing with the lighthouses, which eventually becomes the thing with the rabbits, etc., etc. Ties back in the thing from their childhood or whatever. And I thought that they did, in my opinion, as a probably neurotypical person. I've never been diagnosed with anything, which is why I say that. Is I feel like I do like this portrayal, especially considering Isabel also being there as like somebody who was diagnosed very early and living with it with the understanding of like how her brain was functioning, versus River, who didn't have that growing up and it sort of grew more distant from the people that she was close to because she didn't know how to deal with it. I thought it was a fairly realistic portrayal from my experience, and like they did a good job of like characterizing the characters in a way that made them seem sympathetic and portrayed it in a way that was, I don't know, I thought a pretty clean cut.
Yeah. Now, I do think it feels kind of weird that they never acknowledge it outright.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like they were trying, at least my interpretation is like they were just trying to like show, not tell. But I think it's because it's like about a sensitive topic. It feels like they're avoiding talking about it.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing.
Let's hope for the sake of everybody involved that there isn't like a deleted scene from this where it's like, well, she got a vaccine when she was very young. That would really fucking put this whole discussion in the shitter.
Yeah, it's like she got in a vaccine when she was young. Now buy my crypto coins.
Oh, yeah. We're going to the moon.
We're going to the moon. That's what it was actually all about the whole time. And then they go to Bed Bath & Beyond at the end. And then I feel like a part of the story that ties into this that I feel like gets glossed over is the beta blockers thing with Johnny. Like, so he just straight up doesn't remember the rabbit thing. And like, he essentially, at least my interpretation of the story is like, he essentially just doesn't remember meeting her that time at the carnival, and having that whole conversation. And so essentially he's like indirectly like gaslighting her, their whole relationship, by like when she's like gives him the rabbit and she asks him like about it, and he just is like, I don't know.
Right.
And it's just like, can we explore that? like I don't know. Once that the whole thing came up, I'm like, okay, now let's revisit a previous scene and explore that from her perspective. Like that felt like something that was missing to me.
Yeah. I am so unclear on how to interpret that part of it, where if the I don't know if this is even like scientifically accurate, so just like I'm going fully off of like what the game is telling me. If when he takes the beta blockers, it wipes his memory, or like hazes his memory from the point that he started all the way back to childhood, because I was under the impression that he didn't remember his brother dying.
Right.
But like he has the impulse to tell them to go to the moon, though he does say over and over again, like, I don't have an explanation why. That's my desire.
Right.
That's what you want. That's what I want me to say.
I was just assuming that like it was like, yeah, like some kind of latent feeling, or maybe something she said to him or something. Because like his brother dies when he's a kid, and so I think his mom puts him on the beta blockers, so it makes like things that he experienced around that time in general, like he just like has a hard time remembering.
Right. Is there an implication in the game
happens.
That he was given them intentionally to make him forget? Or
I think so.
Yeah, that's what I have in my memory. But I took a bunch of beta blockers right before this podcast. So yeah.
But yeah,
because that's child abuse.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe he could have like, well, I guess he can't agree to it because he's so young.
He was like 5 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
that is another minor complaint that I have. There's a conversation between Johnny and his twin brother Joey, like 90% of the way through the game, where Joey expresses that he wants to be an author, and he's talking about like reading Animorphs to him, and then it's like the whole argument about the boat. And if ever there's a time to take us seriously when we say to play the game before listening to the podcast, it's this one. Cause like that, if you didn't have context, none of that made any sense at all. But they are not written like children at all. They're written like two adults in an Aaron Sorkin movie. Having a conversation about a toy boat. Like, I was like, there's no way 2 5-year-old. I live next door to a 4-year-old. If next year he starts talking like this, I'm calling the police. But yeah, so like he has this like the memory of his brother dying is gone, and presumably he just like doesn't know that he had a twin brother at all. If that's the case, which I think also muddies it a little bit in a way that's weird to me. I don't know. That element of the story is, I think, one of the weaker plot points. I feel like they could have done something different. Sure. But yeah, I don't know how necessarily that like ties in to his treatment of River, because you would think that she would have that memory.
Yeah, I mean, she does. It's like, at least the way I interpret it is like, she's like passive-aggressively trying to get him to admit that he remembers these things that he seems to not have. Or like, that's the only read that makes sense to me. Because like, if you like think back to like, she like keeps making these origami rabbits, and then she like keeps presenting them to him and asking him what they mean. And he just keeps saying he doesn't know. And rather than, you know, talking to him about it and being like, this happened when we were kids, but like, why don't you remember this? She just like walks away.
Right. And she still has the platypus as well, which is from the same moment. And he comments on it when he asks her out in high school. He's like, nice platypus or whatever.
Right, like he's never seen it before.
Yeah, but you would think that if she had it around for that long, for like 60 years or however long it was, that at some point he would have been like, why do you still have that? Is it like, what's the emotional attachment to it? You know, like,
right.
And she would have had to have lied to him or said,
right,
you gave it to me.
Yeah, like, so I thought like that kind of characterized her weird. And like, I don't know, like, what to think of it. Because like I thought she was going to end up having Alzheimer's or something. Because like,
right.
It seemed like she was like losing her mind. That was kind of how it was framed. So then when it turned out she was like autistic, like had Asperger's or whatever she has, I was like, oh, okay, that's not where I thought it was going.
Right. Yeah.
So I just feel like, as we said, like I feel like it's a muddy part of the story that I wanted more like clarification on.
Yeah. I think that there's like, because there's two elements to it, because it is used, I do like the use of it where it dies, right? I love when she dies. It's my favorite part. Now, when she dies and then you start in through the memories going backward, it implies that she has like like some senility. I don't know if that's the word. She's going senile. She has like a degenerative brain disorder of some kind. But then you keep going further back and you discover like, oh no, this is how she always behaved. She died because of something else. And I'm okay with not knowing what disease killed her or Johnny. But it feels like if you're going to make the autism so central to the character, we needed a little bit. I think that the portrayal was good, but yeah, we end up with this thing where it's like their relationship grows distant, and it seems it's just because they have a difficult time communicating with each other, which makes sense, but also makes it hard to be like, but they were like true lovers, and definitely we need to do this like moon thing.
Right.
And it's like it almost reshapes it, and maybe I'm having an epiphany moment here where Johnny asking to go to the moon is him like it makes him more villainous, right? Like he wants to have a fairy tale romance with somebody they grew up with. And when he goes through it and it isn't as positive as he thinks it's going to be, then it makes it, he says like, well, what if we just cut out all of the messy middle part and we go from that and then she vanishes and then we meet up again on this like trip to the moon or whatever. Like it makes Johnny happy, but maybe it's reflective of the fact that their relationship actually wasn't that healthy. Right. Because he wasn't doing what he needed to do to connect with her, and she wasn't able to connect with him. And also, for some reason, wouldn't just tell him that they had met before. That's the part that's weird.
This is all in his memory too. So like they do bring that up early on, that like some of the details can be like kind of hazy, because of like how he's remembering it. But yeah, it's almost kind of like he had a sense that there was something off about their relationship, and he's like created this whole grand fantasy about how, it's actually not his fault. They can hire these scientists to go into my memory and put everything right the way it was supposed to be. Yeah, and get my fairy tale ending, but like she still lived the life that she did and then died.
Yeah.
So doesn't actually change anything for anyone but him.
I don't know that I necessarily had anything else specific. I do want to say that I hated the part where you were on a horse, but that's it. I don't know. I don't like it. Just seemed like there's like a lot of room and not a lot going on there.
Right. It is a law that Chad hates horses in video games.
That is also true.
The only other thing I had is I was just wondering if you found like the hopping through the memories at all, like not addictive. That's not the right word, but like they had like that quality of like playing through a day in Persona to me, like you'd play through one and then you'd hit the end and you'd do the little palette cleanser puzzle, tile flip puzzle. And then it'd be like, oh, well, I want to do one more. Like they were like these like bite-sized little like kind of pieces of gameplay that I felt like were easy to just kind of keep going, to just keep playing. Kind of like, yeah, I don't know, like eating chips. It's always like easy to just grab one more.
I can kind of see that. I think that because games tend to be fairly long, having levels as like a subdividers is really befitting of the medium, and this game isn't different in that way. So yeah, I don't think that I really felt necessarily that way, but I also think that I was just kind of like playing the game in a way that I was just kind of gonna get through it one way or the other. I didn't feel like, oh, let's do one more. I was just like, I was progressing from beginning to end in a straight line.
Uh-huh.
I did not get the Persona feeling that you're describing, I guess, is the best answer.
Uh-huh.
Do we have Animorph's thoughts?
My Animorph's thoughts. Yeah, so this has been on my Steam wish list since before the podcast. Like, I don't remember how I heard about it. It was like in a YouTube video, or if you told me about it, or I don't know. But yeah, I remember it seeming like my kind of thing, and I wasn't wrong. Like, I think there is like a charm to this game. I feel like the kind of like RPG Maker art and like the personalness of the narrative, like it makes it feel like really intimate. There's like a certain charm to it that I think only these kinds of indie games have. I think, yeah, the story is genuinely interesting and engaging, and yeah, it's not too long. I think it's like just the right length. So yeah, I felt like very pulled through it, and I felt like it was a refreshing little like narrative experience, I think. Yeah, surprisingly effective, like emotionally. Yeah, I think like it balanced the tone really well, like we said. I like the melancholic feeling of like the ending and like the questioning about like, I think we were getting to there at the end, like do you give in to like the romanticism of it and or be like, oh yeah, they went to the moon together, or do you like kind of like take a step back and dig a little deeper, like, oh well, actually he's kind of selfish and his relationship with his wife wasn't that great, or you know, like, are you more the cynic? So I think it is interesting to chew on. Yeah, so surprisingly like deep and substantive for a game that can be like silly at times, you know, like we were saying. I think it does walk that tightrope of tone super well and is a really enjoyable experience. Like when it very easily could have been like a downer. So yeah, I like this game quite a bit. So maybe not as much as I kind of hoped I would. I think if I had played it back in like 2013 or whatever, I probably would have liked it more than I do now, but still enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that this game has sort of the, we mentioned this in the pre-show, our warm-ups, our vocal warm-ups that we do, kind of has like the Dear Esther effect a little bit. If I had played this when the game came out, I probably would have been like, this is kind of like, maybe not revolutionary, but I probably would have felt a lot more positive about it. Because as it stands, like I do think that there's like with narrative games in 2025, my expectation for a narrative game is a lot higher than it would have been back at the time. And this game to me is very little interactivity, which the mediums, the message, et cetera, I want something that uniquely video games can do that I felt like this game didn't really provide me. But that isn't to take away from how strong the narrative actually is. This is an extremely well-written story with a lot of characters that have real depth to them and a narrative that has many sides. Like, which is just a different way of saying the thing that you literally just said. Uh, and it was interesting to think about and to play through, because it's just well written. It's just like a good story. And so I had a good time in that sense. It's one of those things that's just a little weird to go back to now because it is so old and came from a time where games with narratives were a novelty in themselves without needing to incorporate any other novelty. And for me, that's what holds it back. But I still think it is good. I still think it's a story worth experiencing. And if you've already listened to this podcast, it's going to be a little bit less impactful potentially, but I think still worth the like $2 asking price or whatever it is for this game.
Yeah, like $5 or something.
Yeah, not a whole lot. But thank you for listening to NOCLIP this week.
What will the die dictate we're playing next time for the finale?
We're pulling from the long games for our final Mystery May episode this year.
11.
Multiple people have talked to me about this game this year, actually. Next time, we're going to be talking about Spiritfarer.
Hey, finally. Janelle requested this one like 3 or 4 years ago.
Like many moons ago?
Yes, many moons ago.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about this one either, but I also know that this is one that's been on the list for a little bit. So
yeah, it's from a developer of some other game we've played. I always forget like who. So maybe I'll look that up real quick. Oh, Jotun. It's not a game we've talked about. It's just another game.
It's a game that we've played.
I've played. Yeah.
That's kind of surprising.
But it's also on the Mystery May list.
Oh, wow. Okay. I did not realize how this developer specific our list was. But yeah, so that'll be the last Mystery May episode of the year to really round out June. And then we will be returning to our regularly scheduled programming after that. But until that time, if you want to get a hold of us, all of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our email address, our Twitter account, the Discord server where we talk about games and accept suggestions on games to play next. And you can listen to all of our old episodes, including ones that we did on Life is Strange. All of them.
I don't know. Gemini, Rue.
Jam. Slay the Princess. Loretta. Which I believe is published by this game's re-releases publisher. Bit of a stretch as far as an association goes, but
yeah. I mean, we just did The Wolf Among Us. That's another narrative game.
That's true.
We've done lots of those. So Tacoma, Gone Home.
We did do Tacoma. We did do
The Vanishing of Ethan Carter.
So infinite games is what we're trying to get at.
Yes, we've done lots of narrative games.
Read the comments in the comments section.
Flip all of the tiles diagonally to ring that bell.
Smash the shield over the like button.
Yeah. Shoot a plant at a zombie to hit the subscribe button.
Hey.
Anyway, Andy's a big nerd.